All right, we are here with Suzette Mullen, and by now you've probably heard our announcement of our incredible opportunity during November. If you hit your 50,000 word mark by the end of November, you'll have an opportunity to submit your work to a publisher, me, and you'll get feedback. There's no money exchange. You don't have to like this and share it and post it. And no, this is just about helping LGBTQ people become incredible authors, amplify their voices, and if they want to, get published. So that's what we're doing. And we are here with an incredible LGBTQ book coach who has helped people all around the world, specifically women and now specifically LGBTQ people, get into their dream of publishing their own work. So I wanted to ask her all about this month, and I don't even know how to pronounce it. So I'm going to ask her to really educate us. What is this month? What is happening?
Okay, so hi, I'm so happy to be here and chatting with you, Elena, and everyone out there who ends up listening to this. I believe it's pronounced NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo, okay. Which stands for, and at least that's how I pronounce it, and no one has corrected me.
Hey.
And that stands for National Novel Writing Month.
Okay.
And this has been around for a couple of decades, and it's a contest, for lack of a better word, to get people to put their butts in the chair and get some serious writing done. And I believe last year over 400,000 people participated in it. So it has grown exponentially. And so, yeah, NaNoWriMo. So does that answer?
It does. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I love it because when I first discovered it, it felt like, yeah, so many of us make that goal in January. This is the year I'm going to write my book. This is the year I'm going to do it, right? And then we get to October, November, and the end of the year is approaching. We know the holidays are coming. Like really after Thanksgiving, like all bets are off. You can't accomplish anything, right? And so like this concept of sit down, be focused with 400,000 other people and actually accomplish what you wanted to accomplish at the beginning of the year. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's, and I want to say just a couple of things up front. Yes, it's National Novel Writing Month, but that doesn't mean you have to write a novel.
Yes.
I mean, you get to write what you want to write. I'm not a novelist. I'm a memoir writer, and I've also dabbled a bit in self-help, and I coach both memoir and self-help. So if you want to write a novel and you're a fiction writer, obviously this is the thing for you, but you can write a memoir, you can write a self-help book, you can write poetry. I mean, it might be kind of hard to do 50,000 words of poetry, but hey, the poets out there, go for it. So it's a framework. It's a defined period of time. In my belief, unless you're superhuman, maybe there are a few superhuman people out there, no one could sustain this pace of writing over a longer period of time. But can you do it for 30 days? Yes, absolutely. And later on, maybe I'll share a little bit about my story of when I did NaNoWriMo myself. But yes, it is sustainable for a short period of time. And I think that the beauty of it is, in my opinion, it's less about getting the book written that you wanted to get written at the beginning of the year. It's more about learning what it takes to develop a writing practice and to develop the discipline, to move past the, I don't really feel like writing today, because if you commit to doing this, you got to put your butt in the chair and write whether you want to or not, which is really the secret of becoming a writer. I mean, people who dream about writing, think about writing, say they want to be a writer, and they don't they haven't actually taken the action, and they think that there's some sort of secret magic to it. The only magic to it is putting your butt in the chair and doing the work. That is the only way that you actually become a writer. And NaNoWriMo is just a great way to get you from that, like, I think I want to be a writer. I want to be a writer. I'm going to do something someday, to actually doing it. And you know, if you have some kind of a plan going in, which we can talk about I have some tips for how to make the most out of the NaNoWriMo experience. You can actually end up with some writing that you can do something with going forward.
I love it. It feels to me so much almost like a boot camp, like it's a muscle, and it's like you got to get through that initial mental hesitation of building that muscle, right? And then once you can break through that mental barrier, then it becomes that habit, it becomes that muscle. It's not that hard to put your butt in the chair. And that's when you create the work you're really proud of.
Yeah, I would agree with virtually everything you just said, except for one little thing. I'm going to just say it's always hard to put your butt in the chair.
Really?
I mean, or most of the time. I mean, there will be times in a writer's life where you are so on fire and you can't wait to get by. You can't wait to, you know, all the other things that you have to do in your life, all you want to do is write. And those are such amazing moments. And you're like, oh, you crave those moments. Yes. And in my experience, those are not those are more the exception rather than the rule. So you still will, I think creators, and writers are creators, they meet resistance. Resistance is always there. And resistance is really about fear, right? Largely it's about, you know, can I really do this? Or is what I'm doing worth is anybody going to care? And so putting your butt in the chair it will continue to be hard, but the difference is you will have that history of knowing I can still put my butt in the chair even when it's hard. I can acknowledge that this is hard, and I can still do that hard thing. You know, I'm borrowing from Glennon Doyle. We can do hard things, writers. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. All right. So for all of our people who are like, yes, this is what I want to do, but it still scares the crap out of me. What tips do you have for them?
Okay. Well, my number one tip, and which is really kind of the overarching tip, and then I can go into some detail about it, is have a plan. Okay. My number one tip is don't just, you know, show up on November 1 and open, you know, a Google Doc and just start randomly writing stuff. Because are we allowed to curse on this?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, good. Don't just start randomly writing shit. You know, have a plan in some shape or form. And I'd love to talk about, you know, different ways that this plan could look like. And having some sort of plan is going to set yourself up for success. So these are the things that I think writers or people that, you know, that are going to take part in NaNoWriMo should think about. The first thing, and not necessarily in this order, but you absolutely should pick a time of day that you plan to write, a time of day that you can actually do it, you know, that will become a non-negotiable time. And I actually suggest maybe picking two periods of time during the day, because until you get started, you don't really know how long it's going to take you to churn out those, what did we decide? 1,600 words a day?
Yeah, it's about 1,600 words a day.
Yeah. Which is, you know, for those of you that are newer to writing long form, a standard page is 250 words. So that's double space. A standard page is 250 words. So I'm not very good at math, but what is 1,600 divided by 2? It's about 6 pages, I believe.
Yeah.
So think of that.
Yeah.
6 pages, double space, which is is kind of a lot. It's a lot. I mean, that would not be what I would typically produce of in a day of, fresh writing all the time. But so pick a time of day, make it something that you can actually execute. Don't say, I'm going to write for 3 hours every morning, when you don't have 3 hours to write every morning. But, could you write for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, first get up a little earlier and do that, or maybe you're a night owl and you do it. So pick a time a day or a couple of times a day that you actually can do this. All right. So, because if you don't have that, it's not going to happen. I mean, so I guess that would be the number one thing.
Yeah, the time.
The time of day. Writing, just like anything else in life, it doesn't just happen. You have to set aside the time to do it. So that would be my number one tip.
Okay.
Any questions about that, or?
No, I think that's so individual, which is the challenge of it, right? Like, it's not like every person can just decide, yeah, 5 o'clock in the morning, that's going to work for me, right? It's so individual, and we all have so many different things going on. I mean, I know I work from home, which is my blessing that I don't have to commute, right? So that's what I'm telling myself. Like, Elena, you save at least an hour a day by not commuting. And this month for November, you're going to use that hour and actually move the needle towards your goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, every writers conference I've gone to, or, when we used to go to those things in person and now on Zoom, probably the number one question that writers, especially newer writers, ask published authors is, tell me about your writing practice. Like, when do you write? What time of day do you write?
Okay.
And like, as if there's like a secret answer to doing it. And the secret is you have to figure out what works for you, and then do it. Some people are morning people. Some people are night owls. I think Glennon Doyle used to, maybe she still does. She used to wake up at 4 a.m. and write in her closet. That's where she wrote, ironically, that's where she wrote her first couple of books, and yeah. So John Grisham, who, wrote, was a lawyer who was former lawyer, who wrote all those thrillers, all those law thrillers. When he wrote his first books, when he was still a practicing lawyer, and he wrote them on the train on his commute. That's where he wrote his drafts. So we all have the same 24 hours in the day. And yes, and we all have different demands on ourselves. And if you want to do this, you can make the time and find the time, but you have to just, has to get non-negotiable on your calendar. So, and there's no perfect time. It's perfect for what's perfect for you.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is make a decision ahead of time. Could be just, an hour before you start, but make a decision about how and where you're going to contain your writing.
Okay.
So you've got this is going to be a project, right? It's going to be a 50,000 word project. Now, you can keep it super simple. You can open a Google Doc and call it NaNoWriMo, 2021, and you can just keep, adding to it. You could, if you want to stick with Google Docs, you could, create a folder, and then you could have sort of you could have some subfolders under it. It really depends on your personality type and how organized you like to get, but have some sort of container, and think about what works for you. And I'll give a few more suggestions. Google Docs is probably the simplest and the cheapest. And again, you can organize it in subfolders or just have one document. You could do the same with Microsoft Word if you're a Word person. Two other tools that may or may not be familiar to many newer writers are Scrivener and Dabble. And they are both, they're both software. Scrivener is more, Dabble's more cloud-based, but they're very similar tools, and they're just tools that help you organize your writing. If you go to the NaNoWriMo site, They always have partnerships with NaNoWriMo, and they, at least in the past, I haven't double checked this year, but I'm pretty sure it's the same. They offer 30-day free trials all the time. So you could try them out for NaNoWriMo for free. And then you can decide if you want to keep doing that. I've done both in the past. I've done Scrivener in the past, and now I use Dabble. I don't get paid for, this is not a, I don't have a referral deal with them. I love it. It's like a simplified version of Scrivener, and it just helps me organize my my chapters and my scenes and whatever. So those are tools that you could take a peek at before you start writing and decide, hey, I think I might want to give this a try. They also kind of automatically, you can sync them up with NaNoWriMo, and they automatically let you know, like, your word count for the day and your ongoing word count. So that's a really fun little, so pick a container, decide before day one or before you sit down to write day one, choose how you're going to continue writing. So time of day, choose how you're going to continue writing. The third thing is have some idea about what you're going to write about. Now, different people are going to come into this in a different place. Some people may be like you, Elena, who has already started working on a book, and you have a really clear idea about, you've done some writing, you have a really clear idea about your book, and you're going to keep going at it, or maybe you're going to attack it from a different angle, but you know what you're writing about. Some people might have no idea. So what I would suggest is it's good to have some idea, to have, and it doesn't have to be like whether it's a novel or a memoir, or even a self-help book. It's not like you have to have it all figured out, but it's like, all right, I mean, here we're talking to the LGBTQ plus community. Maybe you want to write a coming out story. I mean, there's many, many, many other stories that you can write. I just want to say, like, when I talk to LGBTQ plus memoir writers, that's sort of my specialty, who I work with, not everybody's writing a coming out story. But let's just say, because we have many parts of our lives, right? But let's just say that's what you want to write. Okay, so I want to write my coming out story. That's good enough. Like that's good enough of an idea to start. But if you're like, I want to write about my life, that's a little too broad. Or I want to write a thriller. All right, well, at least you've like identified a genre, but like, could you get a little more specific? Because if you don't have any idea about the big idea or the story that you want to write, it's going to be really hard to make the most of this time. So spend a little time and think about, what do I really care about? What's the big idea or the big story I want to tell? So do that. And then ideally ahead of time, but if you don't have time, at least have that big idea. I'm not suggesting you do any kind of a detailed outline or any of that, but just start writing down some either what I call and others call, I didn't come up with this term myself, tent pole moments. The big major scenes or moments that will come up in this story. Just start making a list of those. That's a little easier maybe with memoir, because it's coming out of your own life.
Brain.
So you actually live those moments. Now, if you're writing a novel, maybe you don't have those yet, and that's okay. Make a list of the characters that are going to be in your book, or if you're writing a self-help book, they're not really characters, but they're different people that
there's heroes.
There's
always heroes,
right? So make a list of those people. Make a list of maybe some we call this world building, which is more for like a fantasy novel and whatever, but it's like the setting that the book is going to take place in. So that would be true for memoir. Like I'm thinking of is it okay for me to mention a little bit about your book? So like in your story, you'd have this, Mormon life, like world that you would need to be describing for the reader. And then, some of the conversion therapy, so write down, make a list of different settings that you're going to be exploring in your writing. And so if you do that ahead of time, or, do that fairly early in the month.
In the process,
then you're not like, oh, what am I going to write today? Like you have a list of things that you can go to, because make it clear, you don't have to write in order. You don't have to write in order. Like you really don't know what your order is going to be anyway when you're just starting out. So to break it down and just say, okay, today I'm going to write about, let's take the example of the world building, the setting, the Mormon, I'm going to write about that. And that obviously is a big thing, but you could divide that in. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm just going to write that. And then you've actually done that. You've labeled it so you can find it again in your nice organized folder system that you're going to have. and you've gotten it done. So part of planning is doing some thinking ahead of time about the different pieces that you would likely need to be writing in this book you're starting, or you're finishing, or you're working on. And so you're not, that time you set aside to write, you're actually writing rather than thinking about what you should write. That's really the point of it. And to just finish that thought, another tip I have is when you're wrapping up your 1,600 words for the day, or your time that you've set aside, make a plan about what you're going to do for the next writing session.
Okay.
Just say, okay, spend 2 minutes, 3 minutes to, maybe you're on a roll, like the thing you've just written, you're like, oh, this is great, and I'm on a roll and I want to keep going. So just, you can even just write, like, however you want to organize it, put it on your calendar, do something so that when you get to the next writing session, you can hit the ground running. I think that's one of the biggest things. I know when I don't have like the time pressure, or for NaNoWriMo, and I set time aside for writing, I can waste a lot of time like rereading the stuff I just wrote the day before, or fiddling around with it instead of actually writing. So go ahead and make a plan about what's going to come next.
I love that. Like, I'm already thinking, like, I can easily, before Monday, I can make a list of 30 things to write about. And then, and then just every day, I just pick one from the list. Like, that's not hard.
It's so freeing to take yourself out of this linear, thinking of like, I have to do it in a certain order.
Yeah.
You have no idea what the book is going to end up looking like at the end. And you'll trust me, I know this in my own writing, you will be moving things around and playing with, different rhythms and different structures. That's not what you have to worry about when you're doing, we call this fast drafting. I mean, this is fast drafting. You're just writing. You're writing, and you're not worried about exactly where this stuff is going to go. And maybe a lot of it won't end up in your book, but it's necessary to get the ideas out and the thoughts out. So that leads me to another tip, is This is fast drafting. This is writing time. This is not editing time. Okay. Writing and editing are two, obviously they're related, and you need to do both when you're writing a book. But when you're doing this kind of writing in this kind of time, you are writing. And if you start messing around with your words, you will never get to 50,000 words. You just won't. Because, so just say to yourself, and that can be really hard for certain people. Like my personality type, very hard, because I like everything to be perfect, right?
Yeah, and when you misspell something, that little red line gets on there, and I hate that red line.
You can correct a misspelling. I'll allow that. That's not. But what I'm talking about is like going back and trying to make the sentences prettier, or finding the. And I mean, talk about a time suck like that, and you will never get to the end. So just say, if that makes you anxious, and I'm one of those people, it can make me very anxious. I have to tell myself, there is going to be a time I am going to go back, and I'm going to make these sentences pretty. I'm going to make this sound, more professional or more beautiful, depending on your writing, or logical or clear. But right now, my job is to, write about this world building, or write about this character, or write about this tentpole scene, and just get it down and make a plan about what I'm going to write next. And then after NaNoWriMo is done, and we can talk about what you do afterwards, then I can go back and I can revisit it. So do your very, very best to avoid the temptation to edit as you go. Just write.
That makes sense.
Yeah. All right. I'm just going to keep going through my tips. I have just a couple more. One is obvious, and this is really what you're doing here and what you're providing, is that writing can be very solitary, and it can be lonely. And so seek support and support others. So that's one of the beauties of NaNoWriMo in general. You're part of this international community of people that are like writing crazy amounts for a whole month. And there are lots of local groups, and if you go on Facebook, I think even on the NaNoWriMo site, you can find virtual groups. You used to be able to find in-person groups and this is exactly what you're doing right here, is you're providing some kind of community and support. And support just means, reaching out and saying, hey, I did it today, or hey,
yes,
it's really hard to do it today. And one thing I would also say is like, hey, you don't have to be perfect. Like, there may be a day when you just don't get those 1,600 words written, or life got in the way, and don't beat yourself up, and don't say like, okay, I can't do this and it's done. You can catch up. You can have, and I mean, I remember it, like Thanksgiving takes place on NaNoWriMo, which, depending on your stage of life or what you have going on in your world, might be actually a great thing. It might give you more time to write. Or if you're the one who's having to go grocery shopping and preparing the meal and doing all the things, like, you may not have a lot of time to do your writing on Thanksgiving. So you make up for it. When I started my NaNoWriMo experience in 2012, I actually had never heard of NaNoWriMo before, never heard of it. And I was having lunch with a friend, and she mentioned that she was doing this. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And it was November 6th, I remember, when I heard this. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I would love to do that someday. Oh, it's too bad I didn't hear about it earlier. Me being like this, or I was very linear, black and white thinker at the time. And I was like, oh, well, I can't do it because it's November 6th. And, and then I had that little voice, that little inner voice that I've learned to listen to, say to me, it's not too late. You can do it. You can do it. So I just divided up I had to write more than 1,600 words a day because I started late, but I divided it up. I knew what I had to do, and I got it done.
I love it. I love it.
And then two more tips to kind of round out our top 10. I think I ended up with 10, maybe. I tried to. Celebrate your success. Celebrate your success along the way. Celebrate, if you can, every day that you actually put your butt in the chair and did the work or tried to do the work. Celebrate the successes, the little ones along the way. And, at the end, whatever you end up with, whether you end up with 50,000 words or not, celebrate what you have accomplished, which is you've learned what it takes to be a writer. Yes. You've learned what it takes to be a writer. You've learned that when you don't want to write, you can still do it. You can get your butt in the chair. Celebrate that you have, whether you have 50,000 words or 30,000 words or however many words, you have more words than you had before you started, and you potentially have the start of a book that can make a difference in the world, can make a difference in your life, make a difference in other people's lives. So celebrate that. And celebrate that especially if you didn't have writing community before, you're starting to build a writing community. And that is huge. I mean, my writer friends and some of whom I have never met in real life, I consider among my best friends ever, because we're kindred spirits. We get that. So celebrate that you have, there's a lot to celebrate. So take the time to do that. And then I guess my final tip would be, and it's not really a tip, but it is, what do you do afterwards? What do you do next? Do you even want me to go there? Or...
You know what? I want to go there at a separate time, like towards the end of the month.
Perfect. Oh,
I want to do this again towards the end of the month.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Love that idea. That's an excellent idea. Yeah. So we'll end the tips for this, or at least the ones that I thought of. Celebrate along the way. Because we don't do enough of that in our lives.
I agree.
Any of us, whether we're writers or not. So,
and I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most, is we're going to have a custom hashtag with the program, probably NaNoWriMo with joy, but I got to pass that by our director of operations. But what I am so excited about is being able to search that hashtag and finding all the writers who are doing this with us and celebrate them. Yes. I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's something very powerful about doing it in community, and it's the support, it's the celebration, it's the accountability, and which we need, and it's not a harsh, we're not like, we're not being taskmasters. We're not taskmasters. We're encouraging each other, and I think it's fantastic, and I love even just thinking about what will be produced, and how not only the product of what's produced, but how it's going to make people feel who have had a dream of writing, and for many, many reasons haven't been able to take action. And to be able to start taking action on a dream is such a wonderful feeling and thing. So yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much, Suzette. This was wonderful. I really appreciate the time you have for us. This was great.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to be able to do this.
Thank you. I'm going to wave and end our recording.